So Mary Ann Cotton was on one of my lists to research. She was dubbed the Black Widow, and she is said to be the first female serial killer in England.
Oh, in England.
Mary Ann was born on October 31st, 1832.
Oh, so she a Halloween girl.
She's a Halloween girl. Wait, when were there witches?
Before then.
Before then. So there is not a lot about her. Now, this is going to get confusing. There's a lot of people in this story.
Mary Ann's life.
Mary Ann's life is busy. So try to keep up. I might try to do like a family tree or something. So let's see how this works. So there's not a lot about her childhood. When she was 16, she moved out to become a nurse, and she moved back in a little while later and became a dressmaker. Let's see here. I don't know if I'm going to go by year. I think I'm going to go by her age. So 1852, she was 20 years old. We're going to start when she's 20. She married her first husband, William. It's said they both had 4 children. What?
The cricket.
You want to go find it and kill it? Shh.
There you go.
I was just to say ASMR. Okay, it said they had 4 children, all who died in infancy, but documentation sucked back then, so they were never really documented that they had those children. It was just like it was said they had those children.
That would be great.
What?
Not having documented children. Like, what? Like,
obviously, Destiny's with me. She was behind the camera. And you wave like they could see you.
right.
Okay. So, first 4 children died. Don't know what the issue was.
Rip.
Okay. First documented child she had. She was 24.
First
Documented. They called her Margaret Jane. Okay. Followed by another daughter, Isabella. So she had Margaret Jane at 24 and Isabella at 26. Margaret Jane ended up dying at 4 years old. There is no cause of death.
It sounds like she's killing these kids off, honestly. She's sacrificing.
Well, wait. This is just the beginning of all the deaths around her. So these are not really that suspicious. A lot of kids died. Young kids died back then. Could be from the flu, so...
Black plague.
Or plague.
TB,
Yeah, I don't know. So, I'm not going to say those deaths were related to her murder spree or whatever, but they don't seem that suspicious. When Mary Ann was 29, she gave birth to another daughter. So she lost Margaret Jane, still had Isabella, and they named the other daughter Margaret Jane. So we're going to call her Margaret Jane number 2.
Okay.
Because...
Margaret Jane Jr.
Junior. Or no, Junior. I don't know. I don't know how that would work. But we're going to name her Margaret Jane number 2. And then after Margaret Jane number 2, they had a son named John Robert. Mary Ann Cotton is now 31 years old. She had 4 kids that died at being an infant. Had Margaret Jane die. She has Isabella, Margaret Jane number 2, and John Robert.
Can you imagine birthing 8 kids?
She's just getting started. She is just getting started. She's 31, okay? William, the husband, ended up taking life insurance policies out on the 3 surviving children and himself, which makes sense because they just keep dying. So it's like you might as well pay to bury them instead of struggling to try to bury them, because I don't think they had a lot of money back then. At least this family, they didn't seem like they were rich or anything like that. So that makes sense. Okay, nothing really suspicious. I don't think Mary Ann had life insurance taken out on her. I think it was just a husband and 3 kids. That's a little suspicious, but he's the one that took out the policies.
Okay. Under her demand.
So, the son, John Robert, died of gastric fever when he was under a year old. Okay? At this point, Mary Ann is about 32 years old. She had 8 kids and suffered the loss of 6 children. So she has 2 kids, Margaret Jane, number 2, and Isabella.
Ooh.
Okay. 1 year after her son's death, her husband died of intestinal disorder. So now you raise the suspicions. Okay, John Robert died. The husband died.
Actually, everybody's dying, so...
Marianne collected the life insurance money for both deaths, which ended up being like a half a year's wage.
Wow.
Margaret Jane, number 2, ended up dying at 3.5 years old. I don't know what year it was. I'm starting to lose track. She died of typhus fever. So, okay. I don't know if that's suspicious or not, if that was a false cause of death.
I don't know. I feel like typhus fever sounds legit. Especially back
I'm not
in
even
the
100% sure what typhus fever is.
Sounds scary. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Marianne has 1 child left out of the 8 kids she had.
Yeah.
So, Marianne ended up going to work at an infirmary
Okay.
called, are you ready? This is a long one. It's a mouthful. House of Recovery for the Cure of Contagious Fever, Dispensary, and Humane Society.
Okay, so
it sounds like she went to work.
for a doctor?
It's a hospital, but
She
they
can't do this
specialize in contagious fever. They called it a dispensary, which I don't really know what that would have been back. No, not like that. What it would have been back then. And
She couldn't do this
and
earlier?
Humane Society.
To like help her kids?
Well, I'm pretty. She did make dresses.
But like...
But you know what? Her past also said she was a nurse. So why?
I don't know, but 12% of her kids survive, so like...
Okay, well, so she went to work at this hospital, infirmary. She sent Isabella, who is now 6 years old, to live with her grandmother, which is Marianne's mother. Okay. While working at the infirmary, Marianne fell in love with one of her patients. I'm sorry, but all those people are like...
dying.
Like, they're sick and dying, but she fell in love with one. You know, there's love everywhere. Destiny. So, the patient's name was George Ward. They married, and she was 33 at this point. Okay.
She has lived a long life.
So think about it. Just keep in mind, she's 33 when her first family is pretty much gone. She sent Isabella away, and now she married this patient. So George continued to suffer this illness he had, and he died of intestinal problems.
Isn't that how her first husband died?
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't that how her son died?
Oh.
Yes.
We're getting into what? Her name? Eileen?
I don't know how
Warner?
Margaret Jane number 2 died.
But
Didn't
Margaret
say.
Jane died.
But yeah, so intestinal issues. The doctor stated that George was ill, but he's surprised he passed so suddenly. That should have raised flags. Right there should have been like, hey guys,
Yeah.
you know, maybe there's something up with this. But no. So Marianne collected the insurance money in respect of her husband. So Marianne is now 34. It's 1866. It's in November. She was hired as a housekeeper by John Robertson. His wife has recently died. In December of that same year, which is a month after Marianne got hired, James's infant son passed away. Doesn't say the cause of death. James turned to his housekeeper for comfort. Marianne became pregnant. I guess comfort means sex.
I guess so.
So this is going to be her 9th child.
That's a lot of kids to pop out.
Yeah. She's what, 34? Yeah, that's a lot of kids. Soon after, Marianne's mother fell ill with hepatitis. Hepatitis. I don't know if it's A, B, or C, but it's hepatitis. Marianne immediately was at her mother's side and started caring for her. But then her mother started to complain about stomach pains and passed away 9 days later after she arrived.
Okay, where's the, like, government at this point? Like, didn't the founding fathers find us at this point? What are we doing?
I don't know if the government has anything to do about this, but I'm...
Jail. Immediately.
But yeah, but...
Burn her.
She's not a witch. She might be. So Isabella came back home to live with her mother. Guess what happened to Isabella?
She died. Wait. From intestinal problems.
Destiny's catching on. Isabella came back to live with her mother. Soon after, she developed severe stomach pains and passed away. Isabella was 8 or 9 years old. Okay. Shortly after Isabella's death, James, her husband, other 2 children died. Doesn't say how. But all 3 kids were buried in the last week of April and the first week of May in 1867. So that's 3 deaths in a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Along with her mother. Along with the other family she had. Like, she just, like, got rid of the last of her first family.
That's crazy. I guess it was that easy back then. Like,
can you guess what she is doing to these people, Destiny?
poisoning somehow.
Do you have any, do you have any,
Is it arsenic?
is that your guess, arsenic?
Arsenic, maybe.
You're trying to think, what's...
Don't worry.
So what else do you think that could be available during that time?
Maybe like rat poisoning, arsenic, what else? I don't know. Acid.
Okay. We'll keep those up on the list.
Okay.
Okay. Mary Ann's now 35 years old.
So
this happened, I think started happening when she was 30, right?
The deaths?
Well, I mean,
I was like, what do you...
Well, we're not counting about the first half of the children.
Okay.
The last half of the children.
Yeah.
Everybody that started having intestinal issues.
So, yeah, 30.
So she's 35. It's been about 5
Midlife.
years, 6 years. So she ended up receiving insurance money for Isabella's death.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, so I guess I forgot to mention this. They got... Mary Ann and James got married. They weren't married before, but now they're married. Okay. And then she has her 9th kid. She was born in November. Her name was Margaret. Again, you got Margaret. What, Janet? Jane? Margaret Jane number 2. Margaret Mary Isabella is this one's name.
Oh.
And she died shortly after in February. She was born in November, died in February.
That's like a pet.
And in June, the couple had a second child, which would be Mary Ann's 10th child. His name was George. Okay? So...
Isn't George the name of her first husband?
I believe so. I feel like they didn't have a whole lot of names back then.
Right. Like,
they just reuse them, like recycle the names.
George Washington's.
So, James became suspicious of Mary Ann when she wanted to take a life insurance policy out on him.
On the husband?
On the husband. Also, he also discovered doing some investigation that he was giving her money to deposit in the bank, and she was taking it and pocketing it. So now they're in debt because she hasn't been paying the bills.
Damn.
Okay. Not only that, but James's other kids, she was trying to persuade them to go pawn some of the household valuables. So all this shit built up, and he's like, get the fuck out of my house.
Right.
James got custody of George. That probably saves his life. And Mary Ann was kicked out. So now Mary Ann is living on the streets. She has a friend named Margaret Cotton.
Oh. Another one.
And Margaret had a brother named Frederick. Well, Margaret and Mary Ann were friends, and they've been friends for a while. Frederick, her brother, has been recently widowed, and lost 2 of his 4 children.
He about to lose all 4 of them.
Somebody's predicting the future.
Foreshadowing.
Margaret, the friend, was really big in Frederick's life after his wife passed away, helping with the 2 surviving children. So she was a really big part in that family. Well, Margaret ended up dying of what?
Stomach problems.
Undetermined stomach ailment. So you are correct.
Oh, wow.
Mary Ann consoled the grieving brother, Frederick. And guess what happened? She wound up pregnant. Her 11th child.
What are we getting out of this money?
Every time somebody dies, she collects insurance money.
Okay, so
it seems like every time she tries to take a life insurance policy out, she has collected insurance money.
She's got to be rich on the low.
You realize you keep hitting the table?
Yeah, I
okay. She is collecting a good amount of money, but money runs out, so she goes to do the same process over with somebody else. So Frederick and Mary Ann were eventually married. Mary Ann is 38. Okay.
She's too old to be doing all this.
So she was pregnant. Their son Robert was born, and he was born in 1871. Okay. Years don't matter. Her age really does, so you kind of put it in perspective. Shortly after, Mary found out her former lover, Joseph, was only living 30 miles away. And he was no longer married. So she's like, She went to go rekindle the romance. So she ended up convincing her husband, Robert, to move to this different town. I don't know what she was said, but she wanted to be closer to Joseph. That was her ulterior motives. Frederick ended up dying of that same year of gastric fever. The same thing that I believe the first son. So all these stomach problems all revolve around her. Mary Ann collected the insurance money. So now she has custody of his 2 kids and their son, Robert. So she has three kids now in her custody. The only surviving of her other kids is George, who is living with James, her ex. Okay. So Mary Ann began working as a nurse, which she did when she was 16. And she was still seeing Joseph, but Mary Ann began sleeping with one of her patients. Again. And she became pregnant. So this one, we don't know if she's pregnant with the patients or with Joseph's. We don't know. So Frederick Jr., one of Frederick's surviving sons, died, and soon after, baby Robert died. Probably because of stomach issues, but it's not specified. Joseph, the lover, became ill with gastric fever and died right after he revisited his will and made Mary Ann the beneficiary of everything.
Wow.
She again collected the insurance money.
Dang.
Yeah.
She was born.
Do you want to hear about Mary Ann's downfall?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
She was asked by Thomas Riley, which I believe was a physician, to help nurse a woman that had smallpox. She complained that Frederick's last surviving child, Charles, he's going to be in the way. He's about 7 years old. She goes, it is going to be too much. He's just going to be in the way. Can we commit him to a workhouse? Thomas said, you can commit him to a workhouse, but you have to accompany him to that workhouse. Mary Ann really didn't want to do that whole process of putting that kid somewhere. So she's like, oh, you know what? The boy is sickly. And it won't be trouble for too much longer. And he'll go fast just like the rest of his family. That statement right there made Thomas suspicious. 5 days later, Charles dies. So the physician, Thomas, was really suspicious, went to the police and asked if that death could be investigated. It was granted. So right after Charles' death, Mary went down to the insurance company, went to go collect the insurance money.
They seen her too many times.
Now I don't know if she's in the same place or if she's traveling around different places. And it's 1800s, so I'm not sure how much.
Horse and buggy.
She gets on that horse and buggy and just goes.
Right.
So she went to the insurance office to collect the money. They said, sorry, we cannot give you the money. The birth certificate is not released because the death is under investigation. Once the investigation is wrapped up, the death certificate will be released, and you could get the money.
Okay, that makes sense.
So she's just like, whatever, I'll just wait for the investigation to be over. A local newspaper got a hold of the story, and then they started to do a deeper investigation on Mary Ann herself and discovered Mary Ann lost 3 husbands, a lover, a friend, a mother, and 11 children, all who died of stomach fevers.
Yeah.
Before their findings were released, Charles' death was deemed natural causes. Okay? After the newspaper was released and everything like that, one of the doctors that had samples collected the samples again, or went back through and tested all the samples. Guess what they found out?
What did they find?
He was, the samples came back positive for arsenic.
I knew it.
Forensics, Destiny. Positive for arsenic. Mary Ann was arrested and charged with his murder. The trial was delayed until she had her 13th child? 12th? I don't know. She was popping so many out, I lost track of how many kids she actually
40.
had. Well, that was also the case. It was her 13th child biologically, but if you count all the other kids that she had 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20 kids altogether? I don't know.
A lot of financial.
I don't know. A lot of kids.
A lot of money.
So the trial began when she was 41 years old. It didn't last long. It took about 90 minutes for them to decide that she was guilty, and she was sentenced to death by hanging. Oh. During her execution, usually when you hang somebody, their neck snaps and they die. Mm-hmm. That was not the case with her. Oh. She actually died of strangulation because the rope was rigged too short. That might have been on purpose to get her back for the suffering of all the children that she killed from poisoning. Yeah, so that's the story of Mary Ann Cotton, the first female serial killer in England in the 1800s. And we'll post pictures of her. What are you looking at, Des?
I'm looking at pictures of her. Like the way they portrayed her in the
She looks horrific.
She looks
scary. She does. She looks like an evil person, and how can
I'm not smashing that. Like, what?
Well, I wonder what everybody else. It was the 1800s,
okay,
Destiny.
But the hygiene too. Can you imagine?
Oh, let's speak about hygiene real quick. Do you know why they call it a bridal shower?
No.
Do you know why they're called a bridal shower? They call it a bridal shower because women, or in general, people didn't really shower that often back in the day, and they usually showered when you were born. And another mandatory shower is before you get married. So that's why they call it a bridal shower.
Do you know why it's called the shit end of the stick?
What?
The shit end of the stick?
No, why?
It's because the Romans, when they had like a stick and a sponge on the top of it, and they would use it, and it would be communal, and they would put it into a bucket, and if somebody flipped it up on the sponge side, they would grab it, and it would be the shit end of the stick.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's...
I want to try that out, actually.
Get the fuck out of here.
We're gonna get a stick and a sponge.
Dude, just leave it in the bathroom and don't tell anybody what it is.
Oh my gosh. We'd get kicked out.
Put chocolate on it.
You want to taste it?
You'll be in there feeding me with the stick?
Right, like, no, I'm licking the stick and like have the bathroom door open.
Like, what is she doing?
Oh, I'm just licking my stick.
So gross.